All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Has the meeting been properly noticed, Christina?
Yes, it has.
Thank you very much. And we will start with the reading of our VASD equity statement. Meredith?
Yes. Each student has access to the resources and educational rigor they need at the right moment in their education, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, ability, language, family background, or family income.
Thank you very much. And as a reminder, we will be keeping this as a normal part of our board meeting to help keep us grounded in our equity framework and our strategic plan. And we'll just make our way, that would be counterclockwise, around the board meeting table. So everyone will have a chance to recite it before our meeting. So appreciate that, Meredith. Then we'll move to public comment. I don't believe that I've received any public comment online. But it does look like we have some in-person public comment, just some general reminders to refrain from specifically mentioning staff or students. And if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be fantastic. Call them up? Sure. And please feel free to join us when your name is called up here on the board platform here.
Hi, good evening, everyone. First speaker tonight would be Lisa Duffy.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing my heart tonight. I'm here to express my desire to make masks optional this school year. The mask mandate has been lifted, which means our children should not be required to wear them at school. I'm all for the freedom of choice in this case, and I would like the choice to have my child in school without having to wear a mask. My daughter shared how much she hated wearing the mask last year and that she had trouble breathing in it. I do understand there's a virtual option. However, that does not work for our working family. I also wouldn't choose to put my child through that again after seeing her struggle so much last year. My soon-to-be fourth grader is a bright student, according to her past teachers. This brightness was almost extinguished due to virtual learning. Her third grade teacher was initially concerned about her academic growth when virtual, yet saw her excel when they were back in person the last few months of the school year. The Verona Area School District states that every child must be successful. If the options you're giving my child will greatly hinder her success. Essentially, my choices are to send my child to school where she's forced to wear a mask and have a hard time breathing, or to find a way for her to attend virtually and watch her academic success dwindle. It also concerns me when I hear her say she cannot breathe normally when wearing the mask. It brings into question what long-term effects on her developing brain that has. In closing, I want nothing more than to see my child flourish and grow, and I'm requesting the school board remove the mask roadblock that stands in her way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Aaron Bonds, and that will be followed by Karen Pinks.
And those who are here for public comment, if you would like, feel free to line up over by the stairs here. Otherwise, you are welcome to remain seated.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name's Aaron Bonds. Got two sons that are in high school. They've been here since 2016. My background, I'm an international airline pilot. I've flown all over the world, seen this pandemic, seen a lot of crazy stuff. It's not just America that's going crazy, it's the whole world. July 10th, 2020, a year ago, from the University of Vermont, a commentary published in the Journal of Pediatrics concludes that children infrequently transmit COVID-19 to each other or to other adults. February 11th, 2021, 6 months ago. From the Public Library of Science Computational Biology, children and young people are less likely to catch COVID-19 and spread the virus to others compared to adults. Are there any teachers in the district that aren't vaccinated? I'm vaccinated. My whole family is, my kids are vaccinated. So people are vaccinated. I think they're protected. July 1st, this month, American Medical Association Journal, masks are bad for your kids. Quit forcing them to wear masks. Journal for American Medical Association, JAMA Pediatrics, found wearing masks increases the amount of carbon dioxide in inhaled air to unhealthy levels. The study measured carbon dioxide levels in 45 children ages 6 to 17 while wearing masks. The normal content of carbon dioxide in the air is 400 parts per million, with anything above 2,000 considered unacceptable. The JAMA report measured averages of 13,000 to 14,000 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the inhaled air of children wearing masks, which is over 6 times higher than the unsafe threshold. The study further pointed out this measurement was after only 3 minutes of wearing a mask. This carbon dioxide mixes with fresh air and elevates the carbon dioxide content inhaled under the mask, and this was more pronounced in the study for younger children. The authors of the study urge those who are forcing children to wear masks to consider the scientific evidence when making that decision. Many governments have made masks compulsory for school children. The evidence base for this is weak, the study found. We suggest that decision makers weigh the hard evidence produced by these experimental measures accordingly, which suggests that children should not be forced to wear face masks. Nelson Mandela once said, "There could be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." By that standard, our society now has the soul of an abusive parent. The pandemic has turned American adults, or at least the ones who make the rules, into selfish neurotics who have been punishing innocent children for over a year and still can't restrain themselves. That's from John Tierney, contributing science columnist for the New York Times. June 23rd, Center for Disease Control. During a February to March 2021, suicide attempts were 51% higher among girls during the same period, 12 to 17 years old during the same period in 2019. Boys aged 12 to 17, suicide attempts increased 4%. So consider all the kids whose dreams of attending college on athletic scholarships were destroyed because of all the sports and events that were canceled over the last year. Sports, senior proms, homecoming dances were canceled for more than a year. We have dehumanized our children by forcing them to wear masks. Adolescent suicide rates have never been higher in the United States. It's already bad enough that we've robbed our children of a year of quality education by forcing them into virtual classrooms from home. How would any of you have dealt with this when you were teenagers? I know I would have tuned out, just like my kids did. It's time for this madness to stop and for us to begin treating our children like human beings. Stop making them wear masks. I yield my time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker.
Really quick, Rachel, can you turn this light down just a little bit?
Next we have Karen Pings, followed by Adam Barr.
Welcome.
Good evening. I'm so glad Aaron said all those statistics because I had not enough time to compile all those, but all true, heard them all, and I agree 100%. I'm up here today to fight for my kids. I'm going to continue to show up to all these meetings and know exactly what's going on with my child's education. Before I forget, I really want to push to have an agenda put so parents can visit it before the meetings a couple days in advance, so we know what's going to be discussed. If there's going to be a vote, what we should be emailing about, what we should be aware of. I don't know if it's on the website. If it is, none of us can find it. And I apologize if I need a little, tutorial on that maybe. I find the website very hard to navigate. I also want to talk on masks, making them optional. This is so dear to our hearts because we all care about our kids so much. I can see both sides, and clearly I'm on one of those sides. But why not make us both happy and just make masks optional? I understand that my kid not wearing a mask might affect your kid, but if you really care about your kid's health and you are truly concerned, an N95 mask is the only way to prevent viruses from spreading. That's what medical staff uses. They don't make people staying in the hospital. I was in the hospital twice this last year, and they don't make you wear a mask when you're in the hospital room because they are wearing their N95s. They've been fit tested. It actually prevents against virus spread. Other masks do not. You can read the label. It says, this does not prevent against virus spread. The particles are simply too small. Keeping on having our kids muzzled is not effective. There's no proof that this works. Most of the kids are wearing them incorrectly, especially at an indoor gym class. They're always below their nose. The loops are too long. The fabric's been stretched out from too many washings. They haven't been washed at all in weeks. It's bacteria ridden and carbon dioxide filled. It's not healthy. There's no reason. So if you're considering making masks mandatory this year, I think you'll have a lot of angry, upset parents and a lot of kids with headaches again that just simply do not enjoy school. Please send out a survey before you consider making masks mandatory again, and ask the teachers how they feel also. There's absolutely no cases of COVID in Verona. So I don't see why there's any reason to keep on masking our kids. We need to keep moving forward and get back to normal for the sake of our kids' mental health, for the sake of our mental health. I know you've heard all the statistics on suicides this year. I think that's about it. So just please consider everybody when you're making these decisions, and know that we're going to want some kind of statistics to back up why. Why are we continuing to do this to our children? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker. Welcome.
Good evening. I'd like to echo her sentiments about the agenda. It would be really nice to have something a bit further in advance, and also express my support to have kids come back without masks. My primary reason for speaking this evening, though, is regarding critical race theory and 1619 project. I'm concerned activists are being allowed to dictate our school curriculum in order to indoctrinate our kids and basically turn them into political pawns. Curriculum related to the divisive and Marxist critical race theory and the widely discredited and historically inaccurate 1619 project should not be taught in our public schools. We can't allow our kids to become indoctrinated with these racist and Marxist ideology. It's a sad thing that so much progress made by civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is being undone right before our eyes. And that people in authority have been so easily tricked into believing that dividing and polarizing society will somehow bring it together. Already we see how polarized everything has become in our country. People deceived into believing this poisonous CRT and 1619 ideology look at everything through a racial lens. This makes them believe all perceived imbalances must be due to systemic racism. Various people, including politicians, representing themselves as leaders and champions of this so-called theory and project, benefit by receiving money, power, influence, and control. Like a pyramid scheme, the larger they grow the base, the more they benefit. I'm going to read some lines from my 8th grade daughter's critical literacy reading assignment book, How It Went Down by Kekla Magoon. This book is one in a pool of books now approved by the district. Back the fuck off. I'll put a hole in you, cracker, he says. For a second there, I got real proud of Tariq. I thought, fuck college. My boy's coming home to the street. For a second there, I got real proud. Racism, swearing, violence, and criminal behavior litter this book. Books like this serve to normalize inexcusable behavior, and they also show the blatant double standard. If the characters' races were in this book were reversed and the racial slur was the N-word instead of the C-word, would this book still be approved by the district? Racism is racism, no matter its target. In our house, we teach our kids not to swear, to be polite, to treat people the way they would want to be treated, regardless of skin color. Critical race theory and 1619 project-related teaching materials are undermining that. We insist you teach our kids using books that demonstrate traditional values and morals and inspire virtue regardless of race. Out of all the books in this world, there must be many as opposed to back the fuck off, I'll put a hole in you cracker, he says. Do not teach our kids to treat people differently because of their skin color. Do not teach our kids they are oppressed or helpless or entitled because of their skin color. Do not teach our kids they are oppressors or should feel guilty or ashamed because of their skin color. Do not teach our kids they live in a systemically racist country founded on racism. Do teach our kids to judge people based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Do teach our kids that in our country, we have equal opportunity to succeed or fail, that we have inalienable rights as human beings, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Do teach our kids to be generous, polite, and to treat others the way they want to be treated. Do teach our kids a well-rounded history of our country that highlights both positive and negative aspects without dwelling incessantly on the negative. We must change course, or divided we fall. Thank you.
Thank you. That is there additional speaker?
No, that's it.
This is the last call for any additional speakers during the public comment portion. Seeing none, we can move to announcements. Are there any announcements from the board?
Happy birthday to Jed Murphy. That's the only announcement I have.
So glad to celebrate with all of you.
Yeah, sure.
Any other announcements? I think the one comment that I have for now is that the meeting materials should be on our website. We will look into that, but they should be under the Board of Education section of our website, which is if you click on About VASD, there's Board of Education list. All the agenda materials should be there. If it's not, that will certainly be corrected. Any other announcements?
If I can quickly add on to that, not only are the board agendas on the site, we have started as of last week a process of weekly updates that we provide to our Board of Education on the work of anyone in the central office in the leadership team. Those are also attached to the board documents for anyone in the community to view and understand the work that we're doing. And again, that just started last week, the additional component of it, but we want to be as transparent as possible to the work that we're doing.
Dr. Clarity, if I could just add, I appreciate the comment about the website being difficult. We are in the midst of or close to launching a new site as well. I don't remember the exact time frame for that, but I was glad to see that as a board member. I have had other community members tell me they've struggled a bit with navigating our site, so it will be getting better relatively quickly.
Actually, yeah, it was my surprise slide, but
sorry, I just took your thunder.
No,
but I wanted to say we've heard that comment before. So we're not trying to hide the agendas, and we realize that our website's difficult. We are trying to improve that website.
Absolutely. So the launch site would be August 24th, but as you state for the superintendent's report, hopefully you'll see more of the details of what the new website will entail and the efficiency and transparency that allow for our families.
We're so excited about it. We'll be surprised all over again when we see it. So.
Yes. My husband was excited because there's a mobile version, and he always complained that it was hard to see on his phone. So I know that's coming after the website relaunch, but there will be a mobile version that will be easier for people to navigate.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, hearing none, we can move on to board business. We'll consider approval of the consent agenda items. We have our workshop meeting minutes, our regular board meeting minutes, personnel items, and payment of the bills. Are there any specific items that the board would like to discuss?
Noah, in Amy's tradition, I will call out the amount of the bills. It is $9,107,147.62.
Thank you very much. Any additional discussion from the board? Last call for any discussion on the consent agenda. Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If there isn't an objection, this motion will be adopted. Are there any objections? Last call for any objections. Hearing none, the consent agenda has been approved, and we can move on to item B and consider approval of the academic standards for the 21-22 school year.
All right, thank you. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. At the July 12th, 2021 board meeting, the Roanoke School District academic standards were presented for your approval. This is required under section 120.12 of the state statutes. It's required by the 2015 Wisconsin Act 55, that each school district must annually notify parents and guardians of the academic standards that the school board has adopted that will be in effect for the current year. According to the statute, which was signed in law on July 12th of 2015, the school board must annually include an agenda item for this first school board meeting for the school year that clearly identifies academic standards adopted by the board. Hence our presentation at the last board meeting on July 12th. We are now asking for approval that we will continue to provide curriculum that is aligned with the Wisconsin state standards. Those would be the Common Core state standards for English language arts, Common Core standards for math, Next Generation Science, and Wisconsin social studies standards.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Any motions?
I move to approve the academic standards as recommended for the 2021-22 school year.
Okay.
Second.
There's been a motion from Meredith and a second from Yana to approve the academic standards for the 21-22 school year. Any last questions or comments before we vote? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, this motion is adopted, and we will move on to item C. We'll consider approval of the preliminary budget recommendation.
Thank you. We're going to put the proposal in front of you, but we want to have an actual presentation to the Board of Education during the superintendent's report. So we're going to ask you that you hold on the vote until after the presentation. But what we will be presenting to you is a allowance for the administration to take our preliminary budget, including an established tax levy an amount of $65,723,748, and present that number at the annual budget hearing on August 16th. But again, we would like you to hear the full presentation so we can understand and be very transparent to our taxpayers of our budget process for this year.
Excellent. Well, we can, let's proceed then to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. So I'm gonna call my budget team. Team of two. So before I have the budget team present, I do have some items that will precede the budget presentation. I want Chad and Pete to be able to have their appropriate amount of time. We know how important, well, everything we present is important, but the budget and our transparency to our taxpayers on how we utilize our budget is crucial. So I'm going to do the first part of the superintendent presentation, pause for any questions from you, our board members, and then we'll transition over to the full budget presentation from there. So one of thing I want to lift up today is the fall reopening. We know as we've had speakers and multiple communications for the past few weeks on our fall reopening. We know that we are approximately 5.5 weeks away, which in school terms feels like a weekend amount of time before we open our doors. And as we think about our fall reopening, I want to focus the decisions that we make purely around this priority. And that priority is that VSD is prioritizing the safe return of all students to in-person school 5 days a week. That is our number one priority to make sure that that happens. So with that said, as we continue to learn and understand our data, we will make a commitment to sharing a mask requirement decision at the latest of August 6th. That we better be probably August 6th. So that would be a deadline. We may present, or I may present a recommendation before that, but this will give us a significant amount of time to consider the following considerations. We need to look at vaccination rates and the continued progress of vaccination rates for vulnerable students and staff. We need to continue to look at listen to the medical advisory as we continue to get updates almost hourly. We will continue to listen to Public Health Madison-Dane County and DHS, CDC, and I want to prioritize that we will follow science-based research. And this is both in pro and con of mask. So I'm not looking for one-sided information. I want very clear perspective from all of our science-based research to make sure that we are making the best educated decision. But again, that decision is in service of the priority. And it's one priority is the safe return of all of our students to in-person schools five days a week. So I just want to be transparent on our timeline, so the community know when to expect a final decision at the very latest, and for the community to understand the process of how we're making the consideration and who we're getting our information from. I think it is fair to be transparent as we learn data, to present that data along with the final presentation, so everyone knows what data we were utilizing, and that will be part of our transparency and our process to our community and to your Board of Education. So any questions from the board just on the fall reopening?
Thank you. I think it's important to note that this decision is the administration's decision. The board supports that. We absolutely support the priorities as you've laid them out. And this is, again, an administrative decision. I know there's community questions about who's making the decision. The administration is making the decision with full board support of that decision as we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that responsibility hold lightly, or our team holds lightly. And we also understand the accountability measures that go along with that, and understand we will be held accountable for our decisions and our processes. I do want to make a statement just on this one before we move to our next slide, and just remind anyone that's listening in our crowd, or if you're watching from the streaming service, and remember, Verona Area School District, we are all in essence one community. We're one community. And so we have to think beyond our household and think about the impact of our entire community in our decision-making process. I know as a leader, as a district administrator, I'm responsible to provide a world-class education in a safe emotional and a safe physical environment for over 5,700 students. That's my responsibility, to make sure that that happens. And that is not something we take lightly. And I understand the broader perspective of making sure that we serve every single student and every single family with our decision-making process. So again, commitment to transparency, a commitment to focusing on safety and allowing all of our students to return 5 days a week, and a commitment to having that decision on or before August 6th. Additionally, we've received some inquiries, and I think I want to go deeper based off some of the questions that we've had about our organizational structure. And as we presented some of the organizational shifts to our community and to our board, I think we may have a missed opportunities to give some context on the historical context of how we got to this place of our organizational restructuring. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to lift up. First is that we are in a very great place that Verona Area School District has experienced and continues to experience tremendous community and economic growth, which has increased our student enrollment for all of our schools. So we're getting bigger, and all our projections show that we will continue to drastically increase over time. And we have to have an organization that supports that growth for our families. Back in October 2019, the board formally adopted, based off information from our community and information from outside providers, that the current organizational structure was not sustainable to match the increase in student population, increase in staffing, and an increase in our buildings and building sizes. To that end, a different organizational structure was developed and designed by the Board of Education, and what they plan to move forward with the potential hires as necessary with that. As we know, 2020 hit, we have our issues with the COVID pandemic, and we have the retirement of Dr. Gurel. The board, rightfully so, held in abeyance the hiring of most of the major additions to the organizational structure until a new superintendent was in place, hence a kind of a rapid succession of hires. I say that because I think on paper, without that context, it looks like we potentially increased significantly the number of staff in central office. And when in actuality, when we look at the number of new positions, there was more of a reorganization than there was than rehiring. We've actually increased with a net of 3 overall, but we've hired a significant number of people, maybe through a promotion process. We've had people that were interims, we've had resignations, we have retirements. And so we have quite openly hired a lot of highly qualified staff, but we have net gained 3 in our organizational structure. If you look on our website, and I without the smirks, I understand our website is tough right now. It's a little difficult to understand the organizational structure as it was originally listed on the website. So we've broken it down by departments, so you have easier access to understand department by department each of the functions of our organization. It begins with the superintendent cabinet, which there was 1 addition in that position, which was our family and community liaison. And I can't think of a better position to have is to be able to reach out to our families. In the academic services team, there was some reorganization of current staffing and a 1 addition of a director and a repurposing of another position that maintain a director. In business services, we had the addition of assistant superintendent of business services. The rest of the other positions were reorganizations and new hires, including some of the people that you see here with me on stage. And then moving finally to student services, there was a net of 0, while where staff were repurposed and reassigned to different positions. So we did not have an increase in student services. So the purpose of this was to provide deeper context to our families and community around the why behind our organizational structure. We wanted a structure that supports our students. But more importantly, I am very excited to talk about what central office is designed to do. I want to be very clear, central office is not designed to top-down manage. Central office is designed directly to support schools and school building, and ultimately make sure that the magic that happens in the classroom is consistent and everyone has access to the high quality instruction that we know our staff can deliver. That is our goal. If we miss the point there, then I failed as a leader for us as central office. That is what we are designed to do. So with that, we've begun a process throughout the summer, and is what we call central office school visits. And you can see the agenda before you. The highlighted portion is the most important part of that, is that this is where we sit and listen and learn with school leadership, both from the principal and their designees or their leadership team, around how we can best support each of the schools. We learn about their goals, we learn about their vision, we learn about their past practices, and we learn where they want to continue to go. Because without that information, we are playing a guessing game about how to best support our schools. We don't want to play guessing games. We want to partner with our schools to ensure that this team that you see sitting over here, and myself are directly supporting the outcomes of our students. We're responsible for making sure that each child in VSD receives this world-class education that we have committed to, and we can't do that if we don't understand each of the schools on an individual basis. So with that, I'm going to pause just for that section to see if there's any questions or clarification about the organizational structure.
I actually, go ahead. Oh, I just have one quick question on the school leadership team. How are we making sure that the leadership team is, or do you know if it's comprised of a diverse type of staff? Do we have support resources on that leadership team? Do we have special education? Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks for allowing me a softball there, because
I
love talking about that. So as you know, our priorities for 21-22 are the development of continuous improvement plans, which we will have very clear goals, strategies, and metrics that we will report to the board and the community to let us know how we're doing in our buildings. The second component of that are school-based leadership teams. And we are creating those with a goal of December being able to kind of change the format a little bit of ensuring, just as you said, that we have appropriate representation that matches the diversity and the probably diversity that we have here in the Verona Area School District. So that is a component of the selection process to make sure that that we have voices that are representative of the student population, and we won't sign off on a team until that is completed. So that is a intentionality, but also work in progress.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate that you gave the history, and we should have done that on your behalf, because you inherited a new organizational structure that was put in place by the board years ago, and then you were tasked with filling that organizational structure. And so while you inherited it, you've done an extraordinary job of filling these positions with highly qualified candidates who we're extremely happy to have in the district. So thank you for that. And again, this is a process that was put in place years ago that you have now brought to fruition and have seen it through. But this was a board initiative several years ago.
Yeah, and for board members who have served for years, or those who served on our strategic planning committee, or those in the in the crowd who may have observed, you'll remember that this was a Board of Education action that was taken out or taken in conjunction with the implementation of our strategic plan, which was developed by our community. We wanted our leadership structure to be designed to implement the strategic plan and maximize results. And this is the design that we landed on. So it was driven by a process that involved dozens of community members, staff, and students. And to this day, we continue to keep that strategic plan at the front of our mind with all of our decisions.
I'd just like to add, I appreciate the context, having been a former staff member and not having the full historical context to draw from this. I think this really helps provide some clarity for staff as well, who I think on paper might see this as a disconnect or something that really came out of the blue, and that it's not that way, and that the intentionality behind what's going to happen in the site supporting teachers and students seems really deliberate and really focused. So I'm excited to see how this will actually transpire to really trickle into classrooms and really make a difference for everybody.
So, thank you. All right, I will acknowledge now that the topics are a little disjointed. They're going from one to another. So but these are high level topics that I really want to make sure that our community knows and understands. So next one is a transportation update, and I'll be very high level right now, and also begin with a very public plea that we are in desperate need of drivers to run all of our routes necessary to have all of our students back in VASD schools. Right now, we are short, and we are continuing a campaign, including some additional financial bonuses that will hopefully support us onboarding quality drivers or adding drivers to our team. But right now, we do not have enough drivers to run all of our routes next year. So Chad, who's runs our transportation part of the operations, will give a quick talking points on our strategy to try to increase our number of drivers, but also wanted to open with this, this plea to our community to anyone that's any remotely interested or maybe not interested right now. We are going to need more drivers to run our routes for the year.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Clarity. I think the board is well aware. You saw John Bremer a number of times last year during COVID-19, making the plea for the drivers to join, in particular, the Badger bus fleet, our transportation provider. And that work has not stopped over the last year, but we have a couple of compounding factors. One, we are actually going to return to Dr. Clarity's point. We're on a mission to get our whole student body back to school 5 days a week. And that's different than last year and will require some additional buses on the road. And the kind of the state of the national economy in general, there are help wanted signs at every corner. The same is true, in the Verona area school district. You drive around our community and see that. So those compounding factors, the economy and the fact that we've got to add some buses on the road to get students back, makes the problem about the same, if not a little bit worse compared to where we were last year. So we are doubling the driver sign-on bonus to $5,000. Rochelle and I are working to, if you are Facebookers, we are paying Mark Zuckerberg and company to get the Badger ad to the top of your Facebook locally. We did an interview today with the Verona Press and have something lined up with local media as well. So we will continue to make a push. In general, we're hoping one of two incentives take hold. The financial one, where we've taken the hourly rate from $15 an hour to $22 an hour, and we've got the sign-on bonus, or just almost a call of civic duty to get our little ones and all of our learners to school. So we're going to continue to push all the way through August, and just wanted to, more than anything, give the board a heads up that we'll continue to keep all of you, our school communities, in the loop if things do have to change because of a driver shortage. And you can likely count on a campaign to walk or carpool to school. You, at this point, can likely count on less than a well-oiled machine to start the school year. And that will be the case nationwide, certainly locally, where there are driver shortages at almost every area school district. That could mean delayed starts, where we have buses running late to start the school year. It could actually mean that sometime in early August, we propose changes to bell schedules to build in efficiencies to make sure we can get everybody a bus ride to school. So first and foremost, to Dr. Clarity's point, if there are folks listening or you guys know of retired people who are even looking for a morning job, Badger will take anyone at this point. They will train them, they will pay them to be trained, and we get them on the road as quickly as we can. And we'll just continue to keep the community and the board in the loop as we have to plan around the shortage.
I have a quick question on that. Should the shortage result in limited routes, which hopefully it will not, because that $22 an hour sounds very attractive. But should that happen, will the points being taken into consideration for routes to possibly cut, will that include economic disposition of students? How will those decisions be made?
Yeah, we would not cut any routes. So the foundation of our transportation plan is that everyone that qualifies for a bus ride to school will still get one. It could mean slightly longer bus rides if we need. There's the rural areas of the Verona area school district require longer bus loops. So we have, as a rule of thumb, trying to keep kids on the bus less than 45 minutes. But we're working with Badger to, what if we had a 50-minute bus ride? Could we snag 7 more kids type of thing? We're looking at merging some of our routes, maybe a loop that has the high school and the middle schoolers that we go to the high school first and then drop off at Badger after. We're exploring many other efficiencies just with some of the routing software, but that is not in play. If you qualify for a bus ride, we'll make sure you get one. And it could just mean some slight inconveniences at the school level in terms of scheduling, but that is not an option at this point.
Wonderful, thank you.
And I just wanna add to what Chad's already mentioned. This is not just in our school district. I got an email today from MMSD, and every email account that I have that says, "Will you drive for us this fall?" I mean, everybody is looking for bus drivers everywhere. Everybody is hiring everywhere. So if you know anybody, we're all dealing with the same issue. And so the more support we can get from the community, the better.
Thank you.
Any other questions about transportation? All right. So finally, I wanted to provide an update on our website. First, we just want to acknowledge and share actually in some of the frustration with our community with our current setup, and we are making understanding how important communication is, transparency, not only in times of COVID-19, but just in general. We understand the importance of making sure that you are adequately and efficiently updated and have access to the resources you need to best support your children. And a website is one component of that, and a huge component of that. We are proud that we are on pace for our launch of our new website design, which will be August 24th. Some of the things that we'll notice in the new site is definitely their mobile responsiveness, which has been brought up. Accessibility, we are so excited that it's translated into 108 languages, so we can continue to make sure that we are serving all of our students and all of our families. Faster speed, multimedia for more of a human connection. I hope that you actually get tired of seeing the faces of myself and our team members with, podcasts and updates. But if we're going to do it, we're going to tell you. We're going to tell you about it, and it'll be on our site. Additionally, it really follows the best practices for web design. So we're taking our time to make sure that we had the best resources possible, because quite honestly, Verona Area School District children deserve the best possible. And that is what we are intentional on putting in place for you. So a quick timeline. Our staff training begins this week, July 28th through 30th, to migrate content, take an existing content and put it into a more user-friendly, manageable site. We will launch our mobile app around 4 weeks after the website, and then the mass notification system 6 weeks after the website. So, by October-ish, we should be fully functional, but we wanted to start with the website first, knowing that is where the plethora of information is, and that is needed for the beginning of school and to allow our families the best access. So just quick questions on that one before I turn it over to our budget presentation.
No questions, but I think this is another example of an issue that you inherited, and sincerely appreciate your swift action to get this done. Much appreciated.
Thank you. All right. So really excited to be able to, in our goal of being very transparent, to talk about our budget process. We hold the responsibility of being responsible stewards of taxpayer money and making sure that our families understand how and why we're using funding to support all of our students, and in alignment with our equity stance. So that process will continue today with a presentation from members of our budget team. I think it's about 30 minutes. Yeah. And then if you want questions during or right after?
I left one slide at the end for questions, but Noah or others, certainly if it feels like you've heard too much of me, and you probably will, don't hesitate to just pop in. We can do a pause or two. I'll kind of feel things out, and I think probably in the middle we will pause at least once for questions.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Mr. Weezer.
Absolutely. All right. right. Thank you, Dr. Clarity. It's an honor to be up here and give the school board and our community an update on where our 21-22 budget is at. Before I do that, did want to make sure that the board had a chance to meet Pete Grinder, who is our new Director of Finance. Has been with us now a little bit over a month and is picking things up amazingly. And we have an interesting transition in the fact that I inherited a department with an interim director in Roger, who we cannot thank enough. And Pete has been working closely with Roger to bring himself up to speed. Also, I recently hired a new accountant as a member of our team. So there's lots of learning, but tons of opportunity with the budget as well. Also wanted to take an opportunity to welcome Yana as our new treasurer. We both had to get an opportunity to have our first finance committee meeting together as rookies and made it through, and here we sit. We are here tonight. We had a past preliminary budget a little over a month ago, two board meetings ago, and a little has changed since then. And we thought it was important to bring the school board and the community back up to speed in terms of those changes, as we have an eye on August 16th, which is our annual budget hearing. And we did not want to be in a position that we made changes to a preliminary budget you passed and presented it in the form of an edited budget book without having you essentially re-vote on a change to the budget following a past state budget that the governor signed here a couple of weeks ago. With that being said, all of you recognize the fact that school finance is always fluid, and we'll talk to that today as we actually finally get to a finalized budget all the way in October. But this is where we're at today. The proposal and an update I have for all of you will get us to a spot that we can put a budget book together and bring it back to the community on August 16th. So as a reminder, as we work our way through this process, we literally have a pillar of our strategic plan that calls out this budgeting process, and that it's my responsibility, our team's responsibility, our district's responsibility, and finally the board's responsibility to hold us accountable for pillar number 5, where we have to make sure we have equitable allocations of resources. I'm not going to read the entire pillar again to our entire community, but in a nutshell, I really do believe, and I wouldn't be here with you tonight if I didn't believe that budgets are honestly a reflection of our values and morals as a school district. That is our greatest responsibility in terms of making sure that we are taking care of the taxpayers' money and providing that equitable, free, and appropriate education to all of our students. And it's big work, and it's not going to be done this year. We will continue to get better as a team as we work through the next budget cycle. But the budget this year is in great shape to get that work started with this new team. Just a reminder to keep our equity framework in the room as we have discussions around all things budget. This will come up again and again as we start to get through a full budget cycle and start to discuss staffing and budget priorities for the next fiscal year. But this budget, for the most part, I think is in semi-final form for this evening. So outcomes for tonight's presentation. Again, we had a past budget. So I thought our board really needed to hear an update and see some of the numbers that did change relative to the state's past budget. We're going to do a quick review. In fact, we have a new board member congratulations, that we thought it would be worthy of our doing a quick review of what's in the budget, what will be in that budget book on August 16th. We're going to give the board and the community an update on revised budgets assumptions related to that state budget. We're going to discuss debt management because that's actually a really important lever that we're going to discuss tonight in terms of what will be in that budget book. The ESSER dollars are at play again, and thought it was worthy of updating the board and the community about what we're going to do with ESSER funding. A quick review of timeline. I mentioned that August 16th date a number of times, and then finally a call for a vote at the end of this presentation. A quick high-level review of the budget process. And again, thank you to our school board and Roger Price, who helped kind of lead that work during a global pandemic to get the budget to the spot it's at right now. A quick review, a year-long process of this school board grounded in the equity framework and VASD's equity resource rubric has helped inform the building of this $80+ million budget. Dr. Clarity mentioned the leadership design or redesign that is embedded in this budget. Wages and benefits have already been passed in this budget. The safety and security additions are included in this budget. Equity-based recommendations, and we actually pulled that sheet out again and did include them in board docs just to make sure the community saw exactly what some of the changes and adds to this budget were. We're going to give you an update on ESSER. Fund balance at this point, we're recommending that this is a balanced budget and wouldn't be touched. School fees, we've been through, that was a heavy lift for a rookie assistant superintendent. This was a change for our principals, many of our principals, to pull many of the site-based fees out of the registration process. And I know our families have been appreciative of the fact that if you register for a list of courses at our high school, that we're not tagging them for a $100 text fee and a $50 lab fee. We had a $35 base fee for our families. And then after that, we built into this budget the ability for our principals to have an operating budget that balanced for them and took the fee thing out of the equation, which in my play was one of the bigger equity moves in this budget. You cannot find a more family-friendly thing to do than having a family member having to question whether they were going to cough up the extra $115 for AP Psych. That doesn't happen anymore, which is great. And again, a reminder to the board that we've had a target tax levy of $12.88 through this entire process. I'm not going to read each one of these by line item, but again, we had a number of site-based investments and district-wide investments that were reallocations or additions to this budget. And again, all work that I inherited, but certainly am appreciative of. Again, we included that pillars summary document, which is multi-pages and does not make a great PowerPoint slide, but was included in the board packet for this evening. All right, now we can get into numbers a little bit, and I'll do my best to kind of try to tell a story around the changes that we're recommending to the budget that will be presented in that budget book. So as many of you may have followed, the GOP and eventually the governor did pass a state biennium budget that was slightly off compared to where we were projecting the numbers would fall on the preliminary budget. And that is, that happens every year where you have to try to build a budget in the spring. You have to pass a preliminary budget and then you don't know exactly where the numbers are going to shake out until that budget does get passed once every 2 years by the governor. So we were projecting as we kind of work our way across these numbers, and then I'll get through a couple more slides and then pause and do a little check for understanding and see if folks have questions. So we were projecting that the state would come through with a $150 per pupil add, essentially to our taxing authority per pupil in VASD. The budget got passed and there was a $0 increase. So that was flat. And that had an impact on our ability to tax in line with the revenue authority of about $840,000. So that is a deduct in terms of the impact it had on the budget. Line 2, we were projecting a 32% special ed reimbursement. And the first year that budget came in at 28.2. So that had about a $400,000 deduct as well. And then lastly, the per pupil categorical aid, which is a much smaller number, but we were off just slightly. It came in with a $44,000 deduct again for a total, you can think of miss. It's not a gap. It's a miss in terms of our projection. Credit to Roger for getting as close as he did of $1.3 million. So we were off and needed to make some adjustments, but this past budget from the state had a plan for that. And for the most part, we're following through with that plan. So a few things that are in play in terms of what happened with this past state budget that we're going to discuss tonight. One, I already talked a little bit about ongoing taxing authority. That came in at a $0 per pupil increase. There was an increase in one-time state aid. We'll talk about that tonight. Tonight, we are recommending the final budget, not the mill rate, but the final budget doesn't change, and we just balance it from different revenue sources. We have some proposals tonight around increasing prepayment on debt, and we'll talk through that a little bit. And then lastly, we have a proposed decrease in our final mill rate that would go into this budget book. I'm going to pause quickly and see if there's any questions before I kind of dive into a little bit more detail relative to what I said so far. All right, I'll take that as good news. So as we work our way through this update, a few of these slides will literally be included in the budget book that we will present on the 16th. I did want to call out a few items in the kind of the upper right-hand corner of that chart. Might be a little bit difficult for our audience members, but I'll see if I can tease that out. What that does show is what I was summarizing before. It shows a decrease in local revenue authority of $840,000 and change, a decrease in state sources, and that's that special ed reimbursement. And it shows an increase of $1.3 million coming from federal sources. And that's the ESSER funds, and that's the extra $100 million that the governor set aside for one-time aid. And that in some ways was the proposed and kind of purpose of the GOP-led budget, that they were hoping to leverage the school districts to use the influx of federal money to make our budget whole. And that's essentially what the past budget has done. Take it or leave it. We're in a spot that the state has supported us to the point that we can balance this budget. And we'll not see, a giant increase in tax money. In fact, we have the ability to pay down a little bit of debt because of that one-time federal funds. So those three lines I wanted to make sure the board saw. And then the biggest one was that we are not at this point recommending any increased revenue coming from any source. So the budget bottom line, one that Dr. Clarity mentioned, would still be the same that all of you passed at the preliminary, when we did the preliminary vote. A quick update on essentially one-time funding that we'll continue to work through. I'm not going to talk to every one of these boxes. I did want to call out a couple of changes from the last time you saw our proposal relative to ESSER funds and additional one-time federal money that was earmarked from the governor. We do believe we'll have about $3.1 million in ESSER 3 money that we will be eligible for. We're still working through handing in and doing computations relative to in-person instructional minutes for last year. And that number is potentially a little bit in flux along with ESSER 2. We are recommending out of this budget, just what the past state budget intended us to do, using $658,000 of federal funding to fill in for that budget shortfall that happened because we ended up with $150 less per pupil. Additionally, and we still have a lot of information to figure out here, we're estimating from everything we're reading that the Verona Area School District will be eligible for about $120 per pupil from the $100 million the governor set aside for one-time aid. That is also federal money that the state has access to now, and we're continuing to work through details to see if there will be any strings tied to that money. So you will see that those two numbers, kind of the two bottom boxes in the 21-22 updated budget, do add up to that $1.3 million that essentially we missed on with our projections. All right, now we can talk tax levy a little bit. So what I just worked you through does have an implication on tax levy and potentially eventually what will be a finalized mill rate. As a reminder to the school board, the past few years with Amy Almond in the room, the school board had a goal of about a 1277, 1275 flat levy that they attempted to maintain. Then we layered in an operating referendum this last year, and pre-referendum, The numbers we shared with the Verona area community was about 1235 for that target rate. And we came in far below in 2021, the budget that we just completed at 1288. So below that kind of pre-referendum estimate, which was a good thing.
Can I just clarify? You said 1235. I want to make sure that the 1335 is correct.
Right. Thank you for that correction.
Yeah.
Lots of numbers flying around.
Right.
I appreciate that.
That there was not a typo on the screen.
No. Yeah. Pre-ref, the material shared with the community with 1335 as an estimate. So then we layer in the past budget, and a few things happen. Our revenue limit decreases in terms of local taxing authority. Federal aid's used to offset that revenue limit. And we have a few things left in the mix that still have to get finalized in September and October. That would be the equalized values. And we have to eventually, all of the municipalities will have to come forward with property values. Equalized aid will also occur. And then we still have to figure out enrollment by the time we get to third Friday count. But those things are all at play as far as what we're going to put in terms of a recommended mill rate. Again, to kind of bookend this, all along the board has discussed a targeted mill rate post-referendum of 1288. And that in my recommendation and Dr. Clarity's recommendation tonight has that number changed just slightly. So that management plays into that targeted mill rate. I think one way for the board and the community to think of this is if we have a 20-year loan, which essentially we do on a big house in the form of that high school, and we had an auntie give us a one-time gift in the winter, and we have a chance to pay down early the interest on that 20-year loan, and we do it down the road, there are savings on interest for paying that loan down early. The other thing that might happen down the road is that we might have a tougher budget in maybe the Wheezy household, and maybe that budget year I pay the minimum on my mortgage payment. What I'm recommending for all of you tonight for us to consider is the continuation, which this board has done, of paying down some of that interest early when you have the ability to do it with a low mill rate. So it certainly a compliment to this board and previous boards that you've made that decision in the past. Just the last few years alone, the past budgets that this board has put forward saved the Verona Area School District community $824,000 in interest savings. That is not only wise for future budgets where you may not, there may be a need to increase what we're passing on to our taxpayers. We can toggle down some of that prepayment on debt, but we're a growing school district. And down the road, if we were to add another facility, we have an option on land to potentially, build another high school down the road. It gives us some flexibility to layer in new debt and not have a heavy impact or heavier impact on the overall tax levy because we're prepaying some of that debt down. So it compliments to you in terms of that happening, and you'll see some of that in tonight's recommendation. So this is a little chart that a portion of the chart that we would embed in that final budget book on August 16th. Over on the right is our proposed budget in terms of big numbers that we would, kind of the big movable numbers that we would put into that budget book. So you will see we did have a decrease in that revenue limit tax authority. That's that $0 increase in the state budget. But we are recommending what is fairly aggressive, but it is, we believe, is probably the right time to do it because we had that one-time federal funds to kind of keep that mill rate low. We're recommending prepayment on referendum debt in terms of $18 million. I believe the kind of the bare minimum payment for the community is somewhere in the ballpark of $12 million this upcoming year. So this is in line with some of the prepayment that has been happening in the past. It's a little bit more than you guys did the previous year. But as you trickle your way to the bottom of this spreadsheet, you will see that even in doing so, we're able to take the mill rate from 1288 to 1265. So we're recommending a decrease in mill rate relative to what would end up with a past preliminary budget, which I think was 1277 before. I'm going to pause for questions one more time before I give us a little work ahead, because that was kind of a lot.
I just had a question. You mentioned several times prepaying interest. Were we prepaying just the interest or the principal, I'm assuming?
Nope, it'd be it's both. So similar, we have a minimum payment to make on that, $11 million, and that does include principal and interest. And we have the ability to prepay on some debt. We would actually have to go into something called defeasance. In terms of the bond we actually took out would allow us potentially to prepay on some of it. Some of that money we actually might have to set aside. That could spin off a little interest until we can jump in and pay that down early.
All right, thank you.
Yep, it's both. Other questions?
I just have more of a comment. I really appreciate the stewardship of this. Maybe I should restate my understanding just to make sure that I appreciate it. So my understanding is that you are keeping the mill rate and reducing the burden on taxpayers while also being financial stewards and paying down debt.
Yeah, there are a few things at play here. So a reminder, the mill rate is just, it's essentially how much a taxpayer would pay on $1,000 in home value. So we're reducing that. One thing that we don't have control over would be potential, increase in property value, but that's different for every household member. So I think that's a correct statement holistically. The other piece that maybe I didn't get fully across is the fact that if this, boards, many school boards struggle for years to try to get a stabilized mill rate. And the last thing you want is a yo-yo that next year we come back and say it's 13. And the following year we have a decent budget and drop it down to 10. That has not been the case in this school district. And I think Amy's leadership and certainly this board's input has certainly had a big role there. But what this does is it gives us the ability, kind of to my analogy around early payment on a mortgage, that in the next biennium budget, if some of that one-time funding goes away and they pass a budget that says, yeah, we're going to increase per pupil by $250, which gives the school board the ability to crank up what we'd be getting from our local property tax owners in the form of their taxes. At that point, we could still toggle that middle rate, and we could, maybe this is a year that we prepay a little less and keep that mill rate steady. Maybe that's a year we make closer to minimum payments because we wouldn't want to have sticker shock to our taxpayers. So I think it gives us a little flexibility in the future in the short term. I also think in the long term, when we get long range facilities planning underway again, and I think we've got to get this budget passed. We have to have a successful start to the school year, but don't be surprised if you see me again in January and we're talking enrollment projections, or we're talking land purchases, and we're talking what's 5 years look like in the Verona area school district. It starts to give us some flexibility to bring in our financial advisors and start to project what another site might look like. And then there would be less impact because we've done so much prepayment on the last past referendum.
Gotcha.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to phrase this in terms of a worry, and you tell me if I'm justified in this worry. I'm a little bit worried that because this is balanced through a one-time reliance on funds, because the way the state government did their budget this year, that if they decide at the next biennium to say, well, that seemed to work, we're going to do 0 per pupil increase again, but then that one-time payment isn't there, that could leave us in a really bad place. Is that a legitimate worry?
Well, I think that is always the case when you get a one-time splash of money. That's not the first time that there has been a state budget passed that's the case. I think a few things to keep in mind. One, we are not alone in the fact that every school in the state is having to use some of those federal funds to balance their budgets. Two, it's hard to have a crystal ball in terms of what that next biennium budget is going to look like. But even our GOP leaders are aware of the fact that this is a one-time poll for 2 years, and that it's more likely than not they wouldn't want to sink every school district in the state in that next budget go around. So yeah, you can't forecast and look ahead. I also think we are being fairly conservative in the use of those one-time funds. We're still leaving $2.5 million on the table for next year, and kind of have that as we look ahead to the second year of that budget.
Thank you.
Yep.
That was going to be my question, was ESSER related. So when you're saying that there's $2+ million, there's still ESSER funds to be used for other things. For example, we just had the conversation about transportation and having to offer higher wages and bonuses for bus drivers, for example. So let's just say transportation comes out significantly more than we expected. You're saying that there's still ESSER funds available, and is that a legitimate use? I guess I need to be reminded too of, I know there's a large bucket of things you can use the ESSER funds for.
Yeah. And and all of them have slightly different categories in terms of their usage. We've spent down all of ESSER 1, and I have most of that reimbursement already back. ESSER 2 was a little more stringent than ESSER 1, but we believe we have many things in our budget that we can target for those ESSER 2 funds. Many of them you are all aware of. Added nursing staff, and we had added. I believe there were added social workers as well, kind of embedded into that budget to support students. ESSER 3, we're just teasing our way through that right now. So it's likely you will see us in the fall or potentially a little later in the winter, if we're starting to head in the direction of a plan for that additional money, and perhaps even that $600,000. We will have to point to places in the budget that specifically tie to those ESSER funds. And there are many, many places. Transportation's an excellent example as we work our way through where we actually earmark the $600,000 in the budget. So you called out a perfect example, the virtual education, which some of our families will be signing up for, also will be paid for out of ESSER. And then that additional 2.5, as we work our way through details on how to spend that, may call for us to be a recent thing I read was 20% of it actually can't be of that ESSER 3 money. Actually can't be for carrying on regular district functions. That it has to prove we're doing something out of the ordinary to accelerate learning. So there may be a year of planning around a portion of ESSER 3 and how we're going to use it. There are actually stipulations tied to having public input on how you're spending that 20% and so forth. So and some of the details are kind of still coming to fruition. The same is true of the governor's $100 million. We actually don't have full details on exactly what Verona is going to get. And we don't have all of the details in terms of if it's going to be a one-time splash or there's going to be strings tied to it.
Okay, so that just reassures me there's still ESSER funds available, and we'll be very intentional about what those funds will go toward. And for example, by using this, I think it was 1.3, you said, to close that miss in our estimates, we're not then in danger of having, for example, to get rid of nursing staff down the road because we didn't have ESSER funds. We still have fallback resources to make sure that we can continue those kinds of things.
We do. And there are a few of the things I mentioned earlier that are still at play. I think we were reasonably conservative on our enrollment projections. So if enrollment came in and we had an extra 60 students, that is additional revenue authority we have that could potentially put that ESSER back in the bank when we see you in October. So there are still things that are at play. Just today, the governor tweeted out he's calling a special session potentially this week on K-12 spending. So we may not be done. What I am promising you is we don't have another school board meeting until August 16th. So I will be, if this passes tonight, recommending this version of the budget is what's presented to the public on August 16th. And we'll make sure at that meeting that the public's aware of the fact that this continues to be, kind of a moving target until we get all the way to October.
I would just like to note that I think in addition or aside from what the state and federal governments do around educational funding, the prepayment of debt, the intentional, maintained levy, and in addition to that, the strategy behind our district-wide referendum, which was, I know we talk a lot about the high school, but there was a large component that was district-wide facilities upgrades.
Absolutely.
That has built in a lot of flexibility in our budget. We no longer hopefully will have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on basic upgrades for aging buildings for at least a few years. And that has allowed for us to build up a very healthy fund balance as well. So I think the district has done a great job of protecting itself from the whims of more political branches of government.
Without a doubt.
So I think that's something to keep in mind as well.
Other questions before we close this out? Thank you for those. So quick look ahead. We are continuing to work through our annual operating budgets with schools. Pete and I have been going out and meeting with every principal and every accounting secretary to build an annual budget. We've had those fee discussions. Those are going very well. Pete's team's completing the year-end audit, and we will update the board on progress regarding that when we have that complete. We've executed the student fee changes. We're continuing to monitor the OPEB funds, and that will be a portion of board updates down the road, and continuing to monitor student enrollment, and we'll have obviously more numbers when we get ourselves to that third Friday count. Quick look ahead, I've mentioned a number of times for the board as a reminder. On the 16th, we'll have a number of things that will be voted on. The presentation of the budget, a preliminary financial report, that will fix the board member salaries, we'll adopt a tax levy, we'll approve the sale of district equipment, and we will have a presentation from Dr. Clarity and his team on the state of the district. And again, October is when all of this stuff gets finalized. That was the language we had. I think, Noah, you may have it written out as well as far as what the vote would be.
Yes. Yep. So I think it would be yep.
So just procedure, I'm going to close the superintendent's report.
Sure, absolutely.
So if there are any other questions purely on the superintendent's report. Okay. So if there's none there, I'm going to close the superintendent's report and ask us to move back to board action. And the recommendation within the board action is to move forward the preliminary budget as presented, including an established tax levy amount of $65,723,748. That number will be presented at the annual budget hearing on August 16th.
Are there any last questions, comments?
Thank you for the explanation. I think this is excellent for our taxpayers that there's consistency and a drop in mill rate. So that will be helpful to our taxpayers. But it's also, I think, incredibly helpful to our district that there's the prepayment on debt, and that's kept us very financially healthy as we continue to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for making it very easy to understand.
On occasion, the old science teacher makes an appearance, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to, I agree with Meredith with thanks to both of you, as well as Roger. Our meeting went very smoothly. We even had minutes left afterwards to end a little bit earlier. And we all were able to ask our questions, no matter how simple we thought they were, and get answers that that we understand. So I thank you all and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Any motions?
I'm going to defer to Yana. Motion of the tax.
I figured you would. I move that we establish the tax levy at $65,723,748 to be presented at the annual meeting on August 16th.
Second.
We have a motion from Yana, a second from Meredith to establish the tax levy to be presented at the annual budget hearing. Any last questions or comments before we proceed with the vote? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And this motion carries. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, team. Thank you.
All right, we can move to future agenda items and meeting dates. Any questions there from the board?
I just want to, our agenda for Friday and Saturday says 9 a.m., but here it says 8 a.m. What time do we need to be there?
I would like to have you there at 8 a.m.
Okay,
We'll have a opportunity to get you nourished and ready for a great day of learning together.
sounds good. My
Excellent.
sleep is very important on Fridays and Saturdays, so I just want to be clear on what time I need to wake up.
I understand.
Any other questions? All right, we can move on to committee reports, curriculum, instruction and assessment,
Has not met.
finance, BG&T.
We met on July 15th and Chad has given you very clear details on what our meeting consists of, but the minutes are also there.
Thank you very much. Personnel and policy.
We have not met.
Okay, thank you. And now I will accept a motion to adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C, to discuss an addendum to district administrator's contract.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion from Meredith and I think a second from Jen. Any last questions or comments before we begin a roll call vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll begin with Nicole.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Christina.
Aye.
Meredith.
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well. Jen.
Aye.
Yana.
Aye.
And we are adjourned to closed session. Thank you all very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Yep, we can do a 5-minute recess. We will be reconvening into open session at a later time.